How do you like this? I'm sitting in a lazy boy recliner in my home in Florida. This is as good as it gets, right? My face is a little sunburned. Um, Even while I'm on vacation, I'm always in deep thoughts on making the absolute irreducible simplicity of Mother Nature, and I've already made it as simple as it could get, but I'm always questioning myself to the point where can it be made simpler? And the answer, 9 times out of 10, is yes. As I've said humorously, and of course I only use that as a visual reference. You know, Mother Nature is a chick wearing a hemp skirt with muddy feet and dreadlocks and hairy armpits. She doesn't have a slide rule and she doesn't have a calculator. Everything works off of pressure mediation. People love to use the word golden ratio and they love to talk about the term vortex. Yes, and well, what's a vortex? Well, I don't know, but vortexes are really cool. Like water spinning down, vortexes are really cool. So, well, what is a vortex? Could it be made simpler? And as I've said in at least probably 500 videos, the conjugate geometry of the universe, and no one has said that until I said it, and it is undeniable. Everything in nature proves it. The conjugate geometry of the universe is the hyperboloid, or the hourglass shape, which is increasing inertia and acceleration, and that of the torus, which is the geometry of force and motion, i.e. magnetism. And those are the two conjugate pairs. And magnetism is no different than dielectricity, any more so than ice is any different than water. We have two terms, ice and water, but of course ice and water are the same thing, but they're just different temperature and or pressure expressions. Of course, ice is not a pressure expression, but let's roll with it here. Magnetism is the dielectric field. The loss of that energy is manifest as the toroidal geometry. The one thing that Tesla nearly foamed at the mouth about, and he was the most gentle soul that any of us, we never met him, of course, but the way he wrote and the way he spoke, and everybody who knew them said he was incredibly gentle. But the one thing he foamed at the mouth about, not literally, but kind of, was against Einstein's notion that space had properties. See, when you eliminate out the ether, which is completely impossible, you have to reify space. Tesla said over and over again that space has absolutely no properties, which it does not. So what does that mean, and where does that leave us in relationship to the vortex? Now, I cut off the top of an apple here, but let's just take the idea of the top slice or the top half of a donut. A donut, of course, is a toroid, and I actually cut the top off of an apple here, which you can see, and we actually have this curvilinear vortex pattern. Everything makes its way right back to the center, to the plane of inertia, or to the null point in counter space, because all energy must dissipate. It's absurd, as science tells us, and science does tell us this. It tells us this absolutely everywhere, that if you take an object and you raise it up above the ground, that now it has potential energy. If you drop an object and if you attach something to it, you can harvest that energy. Yeah? But the energy is not a property of the object that is dropped. So it's completely ridiculous, but all of science tells us that, and that's completely impossible. There's no energy potential in changing the distance between two. Well, this object now has potential energy by raising it up above the ground, or in distance relationship to a larger body, say, for example, the Earth. It's completely impossible, and it's ludicrous. So we're not talking about potential energy. We're talking about the release of tension or torsion, kind of like two balls with a rubber elastic cord between them. The more you pull them apart, the more tension or torsion that you actually have. We can't take that analogy too far because, as I've shown underneath the supercell, objects do not accelerate towards one another. They do visually. When we look at them, they're accelerating towards one another and they'll eventually collide. They don't. They're accelerating towards a null point in counter space, just like the top slice of this apple. And the top slice of this apple is basically just one half of a torus. They're accelerating. I don't know if you've ever seen a coin vortex. It's actually this plastic funnel, and you drop a coin in, and it's very amusing, and it'll spin around and around and go faster and faster. And eventually drops down. They're used for like donation buckets or whatnot. Type in coin vortex. They're really cool little objects. It's basically just a plastic funnel. Objects do not accelerate towards one another. They accelerate towards the null pressure point in counter space. And that null pressure point in counter space, just like the top part, and this is a vortex. You say, well, this is the top part of an apple. This is the half of a torus, and that's correct. But what this is a vortex. This, yeah, I know it's the top piece. Is a really highbrow demonstration aid here, right? I cut the top off of an apple, but as Victor Schauberger said, everything in nature, and I'm kind of misquoting him here a little bit, but this is what he said: everything in nature will show you the mechanics or the nature of Mother Nature, of natura naturans in another parlance. And that's true. Everything in nature will tell you the mechanics of the universe. This is a vortex. This is not only also a vortex, it's the top portion of a toroid. This is the path followed by two objects, whether it be one the size of the Earth and one the size of an orange, or two oranges in deep space. Space has no properties. Nikola Tesla was 100% correct. There are no properties of space. The properties are of the ether and the torsion thereof, and the torsion that they follow. And they don't fall towards one another if we actually imagine two objects that are circling around one another. When we've seen this through telescope images of two bodies that, and of course we see this also too in asteroids, we see this in comets, we see this in any two large masses that are actually accelerating towards one another. They'll actually spin around one another over and over and over again. They get tighter and tighter and tighter, and they eventually merge. It's the release of ether torsion, and the release of ether torsion necessitatively must follow the erasure of, or the inverse parameter of, a torus, or specifically one half of a torus. And this is what human beings call a vortex, because what we're looking right here is a vortex. But that's the path of increasing inertia and acceleration. That's the conjugate geometry of the universe. Everything in nature must necessitatively follow that. Everything. Just like everybody loves to talk about the golden ratio. This is a nautilus shell. It's actually been sliced. And you can get these in Florida really cheap, by the way. Aren't they kind of cool? This is a center section slice of a nautilus shell. Everything in nature shows us how nature works. It's like Mother Nature screaming to all human beings. But you know what the problem is? Human beings are just not that smart. They see stuff, or they look at it, but they don't understand it. It's kind of like looking at ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. We can see it, but human beings don't understand it. We look at nature and all the things in nature that tell us how nature works, but human beings, especially scientists, they don't want to understand because they're dim-witted. They think everything is answerable by math and calculus, and it's not. Those are descriptors. Those are not explanations of the mechanics of Mother Nature. Anyway, I'm going to recline back in my lazy boy. This lazy boy actually came with a house. I didn't buy it. This is one of the few things that came with this house, was this lazy boy. I got a little too much sun today. My face is a little red. Anyway, I'll be back next Monday. Not Monday tomorrow, but the Monday after that. So, yay! Enter the vortex. Pretty simple, isn't it? Mother Nature is that simple. It's that human beings are not that wise. That is the problem. Anyway, hope you like this video. Have a great one. I'm not going to get too much sun again tomorrow. Whew. One of those Nordic complexions. Not so good for sun. Too much sun anyway. Actually, you get used to it after you've been down here, which I haven't been living here in a long time, but I did get used to it. You actually have to build your tolerance back up to it. Either that or get skin cancer. Goodbye.